I'd wanted it to be symbolic. New Year's Eve, a night flight to London, kicking off 4 weeks on my own in Europe. 10, 9, 8, 4 people, a family near the front, chanted on an otherwise silent plane. There'd been no announcement from the pilot. These folks had merely kept an eye on the clock, like I had. I looked around. No one joined in. No one even looked up. Ad Astra's hold was that strong on them. Under my breath, I meekly counted with them, my adopted New Year's family. 5, 4, 3. And then it was midnight. The family cheered discreetly. I've heard the beverage cart make more noise. And hugged each other and settled in to fire up Ad Astra. I looked to the straight couple next to me. They were asleep, and the girlfriend's stockinged toes hung from my armrest like 10 tiny bats. I glanced down at the chicken I'd ordered. It looked like a boiled human heel. I'd hoped for a toast from the pilot, and Auld Lang Syne sung by the flight attendant the others can't stand. I mean, I knew it was a British crew, but this wasn't a British Airways flight full of Baron Duchesses on the way to Prim Heathrow. No, this was a Norwegian flight to Gatwick, which is London's Hoboken. I thought we'd all at least cheer and smile at each other, shrug an optimistic, here goes, at the dawn of a new decade, but no. And honestly, who could blame us? What had each new year brought us as of late, really? I remembered booking the flight. It was the cheapest, of course, but also I thought how chic to meet 2020 in the sky. I've never known quite what to do with a New Year's Eve. It never feels suffused with any meaning or intention for the coming year, and I just sort of stay out until it feels okay to go home. So I chose the flight, giddy. I'd announce my intention for the new year from the jump, to travel, to see the world, to push through my fears of being alone in the unknown, to be in America as little as possible. This, I thought, will be suffused. A flight attendant materialized in the aisle. Sir, she handed me the split of champagne I'd ordered 20 minutes prior in the hope of, I filled a glass, raised it, and the first crisp sips pop-rocked down my throat. My intention was still announced, however feebly. This would be a year of adventure, of comforts rezoned, of new sights and sounds and sucks. If you had told me, if you had come up to me as I wandered through the Tate Modern, as I skittered like a terrified foal down the Eiffel Tower one step at a time, as I wept in the arms of a sex worker near the O2, if you had told me that in 6 weeks I'd only feel safe in my apartment, and that safe was pushing it, if you had told me that in 3 months the passport I cradled like a Tony Award would depreciate to a People's Choice, viable only in Macedonia, if you had told me that in 7 months we'd be 6 months into a global pandemic in which you die alone because no one can be near you, and that the CDC funding has been cut, and that private soldiers are putting protesters into unmarked vans, and that smoke from California's fires is coating throats in Hawaii, and that Trump is lining his desk with cans of Goya beans, and I would have probably believed you. But I'm so glad you didn't tell me. On March 13th, I hadn't slept since March 11th. New York City was starting to shut down, but I'd shut down first. They say you find out who you are in a crisis, what kind of reserves you've got, and I've got none. If you take away friends and subways and jobs and family and Amtrak away and Amtrak and what are you doing tonight? You want to get dinner? You want to see a movie and non-fatal air? If you take that all away, I'm a fainting goat. I'm an empty frame hanging dumb on a wall. I'm Mrs. Peacock in Clue, screaming until someone slaps me and throws me on the fucking couch. I couldn't wrap my head around a pandemic. It was like trying to hug an armory. It was like trying to drink a thunderstorm. I tried, though, hence the not sleeping. By the morning of the 13th, I was a piquant mix of jittery paralyzed. And when my friend Jen called, I told her I didn't know what to do. I was so scared. And she said, put your clothes on, We're going to your doctor." My hot gay Indian doctor wasn't available, so I saw an old straight white doctor who said, "I don't know that I can treat someone who's in a Justin Bieber sweatshirt." He put me on Lexapro and Ativan. I'd never considered antidepressants and knew that people typically took longer journeys toward them, but at that point I would have with pleasure shot heroin between my toes for a bit of peace, a quantum of solace. Jen waited for me outside. We rode a very crowded subway home. We were advised not to wear masks at that point, if you'll recall, and we filled a prescription. She sat with me while I took my first pills, and the Ativan went full Mr. Green and slapped me and threw me on the fucking couch. "I had to stop her screaming," the Ativan said in a perfect Michael McKean. I liked the Ativan. I think of Jen every morning at 3 p.m. when I take my Lexapro, which I've had to put in a weekly pill divider they sell in infomercials during Wheel of Fortune, because the days are all so similar now. I often sit with the bottle wondering if I'd taken one already, if my crystal clear memory of popping one was from moments ago or the day before. I think of Jen on the nights when Ativan's bare palm connects with my Edvard Munch's The Scream face. I mark those nights on my calendar with a circled A, because I'm trying to take it only a couple times a week. I read that long-term Ativan usage leads to memory problems later in life, but in the throes of a panic attack, I thought, what on earth would I want to remember this year for? And added a fourth scarlet letter to that week on the calendar. Jen was my last hug for a while. We'd walked through our neighborhood the day after I saw that non-believer doctor, and we'd bought isopropyl alcohol and aloe vera gel in bulk, like obsessive-compulsive disordered witches. We parted ways and stared at each other on the sidewalk in front of my building. "I'm hugging you, I don't care," she said, and I just sort of whimpered as our torsos collided and plastic bags tangled. 6 months later, she had to leave New York, no longer able to afford it. I can't sleep, and so I have a piece of bread. The sun will be up soon. As they say, when the rooster crows, to bed with you. I take adroit autopilot bites out of the bread, but stop when I realize I've bitten the perfect silhouette of a face into the bread. I stop. I've got company. I'm not alone in the room. I'm shy. I want to make a good first impression. This is the first person I've been in a room with who isn't my roommate for quite some time. To belabor the point further, I take him to bed with me, where he's soon inside me. I was in a particularly cruisy gay bar in Berlin, which is saying a lot because getting gum off your shoe on the street feels sexual in Berlin, and I was too scared to turn around and look at anybody, so I sat as if I was preparing for a dissertation on the Aperol Spritz. Eventually, the spritzes became pizzas, and I headed off through sexual Mordor toward the bathroom. The bathroom was up a single metal stair, which I did not clear, and my body hitting the metal stair sounded like a car accident. The whole bar went quiet. Meth hadn't worked that hard to keep people horny in ages. As I clambered back to my feet, I felt a hand on my shoulder, and I steeled myself for a cold German bouncer to be like, "Fräulein, you must go." But no, it was a kindly older gentleman who'd been leaning against a nearby wall, and he patted me on the back and said, "You'll be okay." I think about him a lot lately. In the moment, I was mortified, almost furious at his confirmation of what had happened, and I ran off without saying a word. Nowadays, I really, really want to thank him.